Hayden Paddon, where are you from? What are you doing?
Here from Geraldine in New Zealand, and little old South Canterbury, right in the middle of the South Island, and it's basically been out of a back shed, a lot like this here, the whole way through really, and I was quite lucky. I was brought up in the family environment with motorsport in the blood really. Dad was competing before I was born, and brought up around that environment as a youngster, often getting dragged along to rallies, and photos appearing every now and then of me in nappies at rallies and bits and pieces. So it was sort of etched into the blood at a young age, and since then it's really taken off, and obviously started at go-karts from a young age, and then into the club scene and club racing. So always had the dream and goal to obviously go all the way to the top, to World Champion, and we're not quite there yet, but that's something we're working very hard on at present.
Yeah. So currently you're about to step into S2000 Fiesta in the next few weeks here.
Yep.
You've been in SWRC cars, PWRC cars, but let's step way back. Let's go back into the days of the Mini. And
it's a long time ago that, but
so this was your first car, I presume, right?
Yeah, and it was. I think I was 13 when we first got the Mini, and we basically just finished go-karting. We're at the crossroads of getting into cars, deciding whether to go to circuit or the rally route, and for me it was an easy decision. But we basically had $500 in the bank from selling the go-kart, and the Mini was the best car that sort of come up, and not the most spectacular of cars, but we decided we wanted a front-wheel drive car, a car that could teach me the right driving techniques to go a lot further forward in the sport, and the Mini was the most ideal car around at the time, and perfect for the paddock type time trial events that we wanted to do.
Okay, so you've done everything with the Mini on tarmac?
Yeah, we did a lot of stuff on tarmac and in the paddocks, and basically over a period of 3 or 4 years, it was just like the toy that I played with in the back shed. Never had a roll cage or anything. It was pretty standard. I think right before the end, before I managed to crash it, we put a hotted up engine in it, but other than that, it was basically a standard car, and it was good not only from a driving perspective, but it was good for me to learn the mechanicals of a car, how to work on it, if I broke it, how to fix it, just all the simple stuff. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And then that was it once you crushed it, right?
Yes, unfortunately, it was a bit beyond repair, and it was a bit beyond my skills to repair it anyway. But about at that same time when I crashed, it was about the time that Dad got me into his Toyota Corolla. In actual fact, the day that we crashed, I had to go to hospital for precautionary checks and bits and pieces, and then a week later I did my first rally in Dad's Corolla. So it wasn't the best confidence booster, but we sort of carried on from there.
So that's the thing that people, I guess, in America don't really understand, is that in New Zealand it looks like we're about the youngest. You can be the youngest here to start stage rallying. Yep. And it's something that's always blown my mind, because you look at people and you're like, oh, you're 12 and you're co-driving? Like that's crazy to me, Yeah. But you were kind of along those lines with the Mini, and then stepping into co-driving. But yeah, what is it really like? I mean, you can start co-driving at 12, but apparently you told me before that you can start driving here at 12.
I think New Zealand is probably the youngest country in the world. You can get a Motorsport New Zealand licence at the age of 12. With that licence, you can do any closed event type events, your hill climbs, sprints, time trial events and paddocks. You can actually do a rally as well. The only way you could do a rally, though, is that you'd have to have someone who was co-driving with you, who had had their full licence, who would then drive the car on the touring section between stages. Yeah. So it could be done. It's not done very often here, but predominantly in New Zealand, people started very young. You can do your first rally, you can get your civil driver's licence. It used to be 15 when I was younger, it's now 16. A lot of countries around the world are 18. Yeah. But even you go down to the local go-kart track and you got 4, 5, 6-year-olds doing go-karting. And so, everyone starts very young and they progress forward. And I think it's a great thing. It's great for teaching people car control from a young age.
Yeah. And you went to school in Geraldine, right here?
Yes, yep, just in the road.
So what was it like being the race car driver?
Well, I wasn't at school very often. No, and particularly through high school, like we're travelling the country going rallying, and my mind wasn't really on school. I wasn't your role model student, so I probably spent a bit of time away rallying, and when I was at school, my mind was somewhere else anyway. But I had good mates at school, and they're actually still part of it now. People I went to school with, and they used to come along, help service, and bits and pieces, and you sort of had your wee group, and but no, obviously in terms of my rally career, started taking off probably when I left school, when I was 18, and that's when it really sort of started taking on the world stage. But
yeah, and so there's still people from your hometown that basically make this operation happen.
Yeah, well, here in New Zealand, what we do with the New Zealand car is very much a home-built car, home-run team. We're all good mates. Basically, everyone that's involved in this project has been with me since I started when I was from 6 or 7 years old. So it's a very family-orientated project. That's quite different to Europe, where it is a business. Over there, the teams that you're running with, you take the budget and then you run with that team. They own the car, they hire the people, and you just drive the car.
Now,
So
do you bring any service people with you, or the team handles that?
The team handles all that. We have taken a couple of my mates over in the past, and we've done a little bit, but logistically, when you're on this side of the world, it's a 30-hour flight to get up in Europe. It is very hard to do.
So who flies? You, John, your dad?
Yeah, basically, and my partner Katie as well. She's a big
yeah.
part of it all as well. Does a lot of the marketing and media side of things, because with the amount of money that's involved now, it is a business, and we need to treat it like a business. So I'm very lucky to have a lot of very good people behind me, and obviously John's a big part of it as well on the co-driver's seat. Very much underrated their job, but I certainly wouldn't do it. I used to love co-driving when I was a youngster before I started driving. But then
really?
since driving, I won't go back to co-driving. I can't. I have to have the steering wheel.
I was going to ask, would you ever go back?
Not anymore. No, I've had a few situations of recent where I've had to sit in the passenger seat and sort of help tutor some younger drivers, which I enjoy helping. Yeah. But as soon as you get in that co-driver seat, I'm just hanging on for dear life. I don't enjoy it at all. Really? I can't wait to get out of the car. Yeah. So
because that's where I started branching off to trying to get into a sport, and you're like. Could I do it? I don't know. I've always thought I've been a driver.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, I'm a backseat driver when it comes to those type of things.
Yeah, it's always nice to be in control.
So let's talk about your dad, right? And early on, he kind of pushed you into your career. He kind of started here, grassroots, just built his way up.
Yeah, he's been a massive part of it all the way through from when I started. Even now, he's a big part of it in the background. But right back when I started go-karting at the age of 6, he built my very first go-kart. Then once we got into the cars, helping me basically teach me how to work on the cars. He taught me a lot of the driving styles, simple things like left foot braking. Adapting all the sort of techniques of rallying into my driving. So he's been a massive part of it, and of course, as well being a family member, there's always been that encouragement and that support as well as you go along. So couldn't do it without him. Yeah. Obviously, you can't rally when you're 6 years old, so you pushed your way into karting. Yep. Correct? Yep. And you started in what for that? Oh yeah, well it was just a small home-built go-kart, so it was powered by a chainsaw engine, not the fastest of things, but I remember they used to give us a one-lap head start, and by the end of the second lap they'd passed us again, so all started from small beginnings, and then that was that sort of family-orientated go-kart. It was all in paddocks. There wasn't a real competitive side to it, and it was just solely focused on having fun. And then after 3 years of that, we went to more of a Formula 1 style type go-karting, where it was on the circuits, you're battling for tenths of a second, and that's where the competitive side come in. Okay, and you've won a championship there, right? We won a couple of Canterbury championships, just regional stuff. Yeah, we never did much in New Zealand, just because we always used to put the cart in the back of the car and travel an hour and a half north of Christchurch, and so we weren't big into it, sort of thing. Now, was the goal getting into karts? Now, obviously, your dad having the rally background, was the goal always I'm going to do karting and that's going to push me into a rally car, or was it I'm going to do karting and see what happens? For me, it was always rallying. Like when I was a kid, I was always watching rally videos. Like I was never watching cartoons or your normal kid stuff. It was always rally videos getting played 10, 20 times. Particularly when Colin McRae won the World Championship in '95. That's what gave me the aspirations to want to get right to the top. So there was always that thing in the back of your head that you wanted to be world champion. I guess through those younger years, it was like a dream. It was like you wanted to be an astronaut, or something way out of your reach. It's not really until probably the last 3 or 4 years that all of a sudden those goals seem realistic all of a sudden. So, but for me, I've been always a rally nut, quite narrow-minded, so, which could be a bad thing as well. So after your dad spending time in the Corolla, you finally moved on. First of the Evos, the Evo 4. Yep. Right.
You had that. That was
2005. That was.
2005. We spent a whole season on that.
Yep. So it was definitely a big step when we went from the Corolla to the Mitsubishi. For me, it was like World Championship. That sort of jump. We'd always been in the Corolla, and even to be driving Dad's Corolla, he'd been driving for so many years, and that was a huge step to me. But then when he went out and brought the Evo 4 and he was going to let me drive it, that was like a dream come true. I was only 18 years old at the time, and given this awesome four-wheel drive turbo 300 horsepower rally car to drive.
You didn't have any all-wheel drive experience going into that?
No, it was first time in four-wheel drive and first time with something turboed, and I remember the first time I drove it just out the back road here, and it was like, how do you even hang on to this? The power was so immense after always driving 1600cc two-wheel drive cars, so it definitely took us back. And I remember the first rally we did was in Hamner, and on the second stage, I think the most amateur mistakes you could ever make, but simply just got on the power, and the power caught me out, spun it around and got stuck in a ditch on the very first event. But then the second event we went out and did, we won it, so it sort of learnt or taught myself reasonably quickly.
Very quickly. So. And with New Zealand Rally Championship, what I'm aware is you don't need, like in Rally America we have certain coefficients where if you start in a Group 2 front-wheel drive car, non-turbo, make your way up, or non-turbo car, make your way up until you get so many coefficients to where you can get into a turbo car. Yeah, sure. In New Zealand, you don't.
No, basically it's at the decision of whoever's driving the car and how much money they want to spend. So whether it be, we club to out a Starlet, reasonably inexpensively to run, and you can still have a lot of fun. Or now these days, four-wheel drive turbo cars, because there's so many of them out there, are quite readily available, so a lot of people jump in at those opportunities, which isn't necessarily correct. Like, you can have just as much fun driving a Mini or a Starlet than what you can driving one of these. It's just that you're going a little bit faster in these, which sometimes means the accidents happen a bit quicker as well. So,
and that one did happen in the 4, right?
That was pretty unfortunate, really. It was a nothing accident.
Really?
We were leading the rally and we just ran a little bit wide, and there was all this sort of long grass alongside the road. And just thought we're just going to brush through the grass and carry on, but unfortunately when we went through the grass there wasn't anything underneath it, and we just disappeared down the bank. So there was next to no damage done to the car. I think it had a side skirter fallen off it and maybe a broken window screen. There was not really any dents on it. But then 10 minutes later it caught on fire, unfortunately, and we couldn't, with the way the car was sitting, we couldn't move it. And the only thing we salvaged from the fire was the rear diff and I think one axle. Everything else was melted to a crisp. So that was unbelievable.
And so, did it ever come to a point? I mean, me being a ski racer, I've done it my whole life. There became a point where you're putting so much money into it, you're doing so much traveling. Was there ever like a breakdown moment where you're like, this is too much? Like have you ever had that? There's always that moment with every athlete or something where it's like, I'm putting my whole life into this. Did you ever get to that breaking point where it's just like?
I wouldn't say breaking point, but the last 3 years and even now is like that. Like even a little bit when that car burnt down was a little bit like that, but we weren't at that professional level. At the time, we didn't have a lot of money. We haven't come from a wealthy background. It was a $30,000 rally car that you had no insurance on, or back to scratch. We were quite lucky. We had a lot of people help us out of that hole and get us back up, which has obviously helped us to get to where we are now. But now we're having to raise 7 figures, and it is particularly from New Zealand. That's not a huge population. We've got a very small economy. Trying to find that money is a real headache, and it's frustrating when you can perform as a driver, but there are so many other factors that are controlling whether you actually make it or not. So you do hit your head against a brick wall sometimes.
I remember Mickey Biason.
Yes.
During the banquet at Otago, I remember he pointed at you and mentioned something about knowing how stressful it is to having to produce results.
Oh, definitely.
As a driver, because you're no longer in a Mini, you're no longer in a Corolla now. We've got you've got Skodas in Europe that that you're expected to do well in.
And we've got sponsors, we've got shareholders, we've got people that are investing in us. That there is a lot of expectations there, and it does make it a little bit harder. But in saying that, I still think I'm the luckiest person in the world, because I'm doing what I love to do, which is to drive rally cars. And it's amazing, like, there's all this other stuff that happens. You only really get to drive competitively once a month, so there's a lot of other time spent doing the other stuff. But when you get in the car and you put the helmet on, everything else disappears, and it's the most incredible feeling ever. It's just tunnel vision like, and all you're focusing on is driving the car, and that's why I do it, because I just love driving a rally car.
So what, besides driving though, you know, you're working in the shop, you're doing all different stuff to make it happen. What else do you do if you get free time? What do you like to do? Just, okay, I gotta relax.
I'm told by my girlfriend now I don't do that enough, relax. So for me, I've always been quite narrow-minded and you know, quite singly focused on something.
Yep.
And you know, I probably don't appreciate a lot of things that we're doing right now enough. Like, you know, we're traveling the world, but at the same time, you're so focused on the job you got to do, you actually forget you're traveling the world. And there'll probably come a point that one day I'll look back and go, well, maybe I should have taken it in a bit more. But you know, my whole philosophy is that, you know, we've got one chance at this, and that chance is now, and you've got to make the most of that. So, but no, the only other thing I guess I do to get away from it sometimes, which you do need to do occasionally, is play a bit of golf. Yeah. Which while you're playing golf, you wonder why you're playing it, because it never goes to plan. So yes, you get frustrated, but
it's impossible. Yeah.
It is an impossible game, chasing a little white ball around.
Yeah.
But other than that, you know, you spend a lot of time in the gym, working on the car, sponsorship, PR, the business side of it all. So I enjoy all aspects. So
it's hard to tackle.
It's good.
I mean, you got to build this car.
Yes.
You got to race it. And you also got to be an athlete.
Yeah. It's definitely big commitments. But at the end of the day, if it was easy, everybody would do it. And I've always thrived on a bit of a challenge. But
so now you got this. This is the Evo 9.
Yes. Yep.
You've had it for a while.
We built this 2008, so 5 years now.
And you won the championship, New Zealand championship in it.
Yep.
Twice.
Yeah, 2 times.
Yep.
So it's got a bit of history, this car, and this car was the same car that also won the Pirelli driver qualifier for us, which gave us a scholarship to get into the World Championship. So, like, we had quite a big accident with this car a year or two ago in a corporate event, and it was at the point where normally you'd throw it away. You'd say, okay, it's too damaged, but because of the history with the car, and I think this car's now won 14 straight rallies in New Zealand Championship, you know, over 4 or 5 years. So it had too much history to replace it. So we actually repaired it, which was a massive job. But it's got a lot of history, this car.
That's when you think you should have just did a full reshell.
It would have been cheaper too, but it would have lost its integrity then. So it's still a member of the family, if you like.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But,
so John Kennard, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, yep.
He's been sitting with you for...
He came on board in 2006, so quite a while, and he was actually initially working with the Subaru World Rally team.
Yep.
He was part of the team management side of things, and come back to New Zealand to retire. He'd spent 15 years living in the UK, come back here, started up a vineyard in top of South Island, up in Blenheim, making a bit of wine. Come back to retire. We rang him a year later, say, hey, look, do you want to get in part of this? You know, we knew he was back in the country, had a lot of experience.
Yeah.
Initially, he thought, you know, a young guy wants to go rallying, we'll see how this goes. He never thought it would lead him back to the World Championship, which he supposedly retired from. So now he's back there, he's just on the other side of the fence and inside the car.
Yeah. Alright, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I've watched a bit of in-car, and the one thing that intrigued me in your conversation during stages was either the flick or the flip. What does he say? I couldn't figure it out.
We have a blip in the pace notes.
Is it a blip?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but basically the blips are a very short distance. So you could have, normally 30 metres is a shorter straight, but sometimes there might be a very small interval where you don't want to get into the nitty gritty of calling it 5 metres or 10 metres, you just call it a blip.
Do other people use that randomly?
Well, we actually got that from Possum Bourne.
Really? Okay.
He was one of my idols, you know, he was obviously a very big icon here in New Zealand sport, and growing up watching him, that was something, you know, he always said blip. And the same thing as yourself, I always used to think, what was that? And it wasn't actually until I started driving until I learnt what it actually was.
Because I've never heard of it. I've never used it. Like I use into, you know, like you know, left 5 into, you know, right 4 or something. And then I heard it. I was watching in-car and I thought flick. I was like, that's cool because you go, you know, flick. Flick. But it's
the pace notes are absolutely critical though. Like that was the big thing when John came on board actually, is how much he helped teach me with writing notes. Like in New Zealand and I think it's similar in America, where you have a Jemba pace note system where you supply it and organise a set. We got to a point where we had to, you know, try and develop it a bit more when you're trying to drive 100%.
Oh, you have to.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not very detailed.
No, they lack a little bit of information, and they can be a little bit inconsistent as well. But I remember the first rally we wrote pace notes for was our first rally win. So it helped us take that next step. But the big thing that John helped me realise is it didn't matter what you called things. You could call it an apple, you could call it a banana, as long as the driver knew exactly what it meant and they could paint the picture in their head of what that was going to happen, what was coming. That was the main thing. So we use a few funny words, but it means something to me.
So do you number turns? 1 through 10?
Yeah, 1 to 8 for
1 to 8,
1 being a cute hairpin, 8 being a nothing corner basically. But we're very detailed in our notes. A lot of emphasis actually goes into the length of the corner, which I actually find the most important information. So a lot of people in your Jimba notes, for example, will mainly just have a 4 right, or it might have a long 4 right. You only really get your 2 variations. We have about 6 variations of the length of the corner, from a short, a half, a medium, a half long. Then if it gets very long, you put it over a distance, because that really dictates on how much speed you can carry through the corner.
Yeah, exactly, because you could just, if it's short, you could just push it right in.
Basically straight through it.
Right
you
out.
can almost ignore it sometimes. So whereas a long corners, you obviously got to keep the car tucked in. So I put a lot of emphasis into that part of it. But our pace notes, I think we have 1 page of pace notes per 1 kilometre.
Yeah.
So sometimes on the really twisty stages, John and I have a wee race. He starts talking at the start, and that's where he gets to the finish first wins. So that's good fun.
Now, do you get 2 pass recce here?
We get a 1 pass
you get
recce
one
here.
with
Yes.
the nose.
The international rallies, we get a 2 pass.
Get a 2 pass.
Yeah.
And at the international run, do you have to write everything?
No, there is also the organiser
They do
notes,
have it,
but
okay.
we choose to write. But even here in New Zealand Championship now, we still write on 1 pass.
Really?
And we initially thought it was a bad thing because it wasn't encouraging international competitors to come here. But there's actually some good things in it, in the fact that we learned to write good pace notes on 1 pass only.
And
So when we go to Europe, on the 2nd pass, we're actually, all we're doing is checking.
Right.
We're not actually trying to adjust them or fiddle them too much. So there is the benefits.
that to me, sitting in a car, that to me, that's night and day, whether you go fast or not, is to get that right.
Definitely.
And we're on Jumbo notes, and we're just like,
You're a bit of a passenger.
I think that's a 4. I hope it's a 4.
Exactly.
Because the first time I co-drove, it was we did no recce. Because we just couldn't get the car. The guy who had the car, we couldn't get it done in time, and it was just real short. So it was my first time co-driving. So it was
chucked in the deep end then.
all right. Here we go. We went at one point. We went into I called it a 4, and it was a 1.
That would have had him on his toes then. Yeah.
We went right through a photographer almost.
And that's the worst thing of those notes is as soon as you have that second guessing in your head, every time you back off or hesitate on the throttle, it's just time loss.
Yeah.
It's just you hemorrhage time.
Yeah.
So
And it's all about momentum.
oh, it is exactly. Every 2 kilometres, we worked it out. Every 2 or 3 kilometres extra corner speed you can carry, which you can't even really feel that difference, equates to 0.2 of a second gained at the end of a 100 metre straight. And you think on a 30k stage, how many of those situations you have, these 10-15 seconds alone for every 2 or 3 kilometres, so it makes a big difference.
It's a huge difference. So now, looking towards the future, you got this car, and you're working with teams over in Europe, and I guess 2012 was your first SWRC car.
Yes,
right?
yep, that's right.
You ran a full season.
Yep, full East WRC. So.
And then financially, just didn't happen the start of this year.
Well, in saying that, financially it hasn't really happened the past 2 years.
Okay.
Even last year, every rally we were having to find a budget in the weeks leading up to it, and particularly the last 3 rallies last year, it was getting very hard to the point where we would have missed the last rally last year. Luckily, Red Bull came on last minute and actually helped us through a bit of a sticky situation. So it's always been the case for us. The difference this year compared to other years in the past, you had to enter the championship by deadline.
Yeah.
This year there is no deadline. You just do rallies as you go. So we're actually trying to find a budget before we compete now to take away that worrying thought in your head that while you're driving the car you're also having to think about money. If we get the budget in place before we go, then we can just go drive. And that's going to put me in a better mind space. So it's coming together now. We've got 3 events planned when we go back over, and hopefully more if we can get some good results. We may be able to still put together a full championship this year yet. So it's all heading in the right direction.
And your first one's an ERC event.
Yes.
European Rally Championship.
Yep.
And that's such an unknown event in the States, and then
Yes.
other places, but I mean the competition is pretty much WRC.
Oh, it is
at that point.
And particularly in ERC, you're basically competing against all Super 2000 cars,
Yeah.
and we're all competing to win the rally. Whereas compared to WRC, you might be trying to get in the top 10 behind the World Rally cars. But the EPRA rally's actually got a lot of history. It's a very famous European rally.
Yeah.
I didn't even know how to pronounce the place until
Yeah.
we decided to enter, but it's a very specialised event as well. The locals go very fast, there's lots of big ditches, quite specialised. But as a driver, we do need to step outside our comfort levels and experience these different events and keep developing as a driver. So it's a good opportunity to do that now, and then it's a good warm-up before we go to Finland with our first WRC rally.
Yeah. So you, I forgot to mention before, in 2011 you were a PWRC champion.
Yes.
Pretty much almost right out of the box.
Yeah, it was
2010 you ran.
Yep.
2011 you won it.
Yep.
And now you're in a Super 2000 car. What are the differences? What do you like better, driving a production car versus Super 2000 car?
They are quite different.
To adapt?
There's very a lot. It probably, in hindsight, took me most of last year to really start to adapt to the Super 2000 car. Simply for the last 6 years, I've been driving a turbo car, and with the turbo, obviously you get that torque, you get that low down torque, and you can basically throw it in fifth gear almost some cars and some rallies, and just leave it in fifth gear and just drive it, and you get the engine torque. The Super 2000 car, you've got to be changing gear all the time. They rev to 8,500 revs, and the peak torque is between 8.3 and 8.5. You've got a 200 RPM window of max torque, and to keep in that all the time, when I've come from an environment where I always just keep changing gears, is really, really difficult. So I think I'm starting to get on top of it now. But the Super 2000 car is just an incredible car to drive. Like, it's a full-blown rally car. Every single part on it's fabricated to be a race car. From a sequential gearbox to you can brake so much later. It's very responsive. They're an amazing car to drive. But in saying that, the Group N cars and the production cars are probably easier to drive because they're a bit more like a lazy boy couch, if you like. You just sort of sit there and you can just do things, and you can let the car do a bit more of the work. But you feel like a real race driver when you're in these other cars. So they're definitely pretty special.
So the 2013 season, like we said, ERC and WRC.
Yep.
Do you know for a fact that you have the funds to do the next couple? Or how is it?
We have the funds secured for the next 3 at this stage.
Okay.
The ERC in EPRA, and then WRC in Finland and Germany.
Okay.
And then we're hoping to maybe also do WRC in Australia in September. And then, as I say, that's half a championship then. That's 3 of the 6 rallies that you have to do as part of WRC2. So if we have some good results and there's a bit of momentum, we'd like to try and do the last 3 as well.
Okay, yeah. And so the 2014 season, any ideas? What do you think might come of it?
Well, it's looming pretty quickly anyway. But at the end of the day, like as I say, like my goal is always to be world champion, and that's what we're working very hard towards doing. So I think we have to try and be in a world rally car of some sort next year, whether it be privateer or whether it be looking for other opportunities. So this year's about trying to get the results, show our speed, and trying to open some doors for opportunities, whether it be with privateer teams or whatever. But we need to be in a world rally car next year of some sort. Ultimately, to try and be world champion in the future, you do have to get yourself in a factory manufacturer environment. So that's ultimately who we have to catch attention of. So
now, how much, from a privateer standpoint, how much difference really is it from SWRC to a full WRC blown effort?
Funding wise, it's probably nearly double.
Is it really?
So it is a big commitment. Like when you think to do a WRC2 campaign or on a Super 2000 car, it's basically $1 million New Zealand dollars, or it's $800,000 US dollars. To do a WRC campaign is probably in the vicinity of $1.5 to $2 million. So it's a huge commitment. But when you come from New Zealand, it makes it a little harder for us, because the problem here in New Zealand, and you might get a little bit of it in America as well, is that they don't realise how big the sport is in Europe. And when you actually go to the events in Europe, you get anywhere from 300 to 500,000 spectators over a 3-day event. The sport's massive over there, and that's why these manufacturer teams are pouring millions and millions of dollars into the sport, is because they can sell all the cars out of it. So We've been very lucky. We get a lot of support here in New Zealand. They've helped us get to where we are now. But ultimately, for us to keep going further forward, we do need to get into a factory team somewhere and try and get that support.
Out of all the WRC events you've done, what is your favorite venue?
Well, it's easy, New Zealand.
Home turf.
Yeah,
How could you not say that?
Nothing beats New Zealand roads. Like, we've been all over the world, and the roads in New Zealand here, they're like a motorway on gravel. Basically, they're just absolute driving pleasure. But there are two events that stick out around the world, and Finland is one. Like, Finland is a home of rallying. Like, you go there and the atmosphere is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Everyone's partying for the week, and it's just a real buzz to be part of such an event. Another one is Argentina, South America. The fans there are just absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Like, the year we were there in 2011, there were 900,000 spectators, and they were camping up in the top of El Condor and bits and pieces a week before the event, and it was winter, in the tents and drinking vodka and all sorts, and I just couldn't believe the amount of people at the event. So, but anywhere you get to go around the world, it's always pretty special. There's always the different cultures, and as I say, I'm pretty lucky to do something I love to do.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. If you could drive any rally car in the world, which one would it be? Any year?
Oh,
that's a hard one.
That is a hard one. There's a lot of cars to choose from. There's probably.
Let's divvy it up. Would it be 60s, 70s? Would it be a Group B car?
Well, of the Group B era, the Audi definitely sticks out.
It's
pretty, it's famous with the rally in the first sort of full-time four-wheel drive car.
Yeah.
Probably the car that sticks out for me, and one I'd like to drive, is the 95 Impreza. The one that Colin McRae, the 555 one. The anti-lag and the real crisp Subaru sound. It was definitely a pretty special car. Of modern day, any of the World Rally cars are all pretty cool. They're all pretty much muchness, but I must admit the one that stands out at the moment is not really a rally car, but this new Pikes Peak car of Sebastian Loeb's, the Peugeot.
Yeah.
That just seems like a machine.
Yeah.
1-to-1 power, the weight ratio, and to drive something like that would be pretty cool.
Which is coming up in
yes,
a couple
not
weeks,
far away now. So
which will be done when you watch this video, but we hope he does well.
At the end of the day, any car is always nice to drive. As I say, it doesn't matter whether you're driving a Starlet or a Mitzi or a World Rally car. At the end of the day, you're driving for the actual pure pleasure of driving. You can still go sideways, you can have fun, you can scare yourself, you can crash. All aspects of rallying that you can do in any sort of car. So I've been quite lucky to drive quite a lot of cars, and I've enjoyed every single one of them.
Awesome. And then stupid question, because I don't know if you'll ever make your own. It's not a stupid question, but are we still looking good on the film? Do you ever see yourself going to America to rally? Have you ever thought of it? And what do you think of X Games?
Well, it's funny you ask, because it was something I looked at about 6 months ago, actually.
Really?
Is potentially going to America, and so we did make some inquiries.
Okay.
Particularly the global rallycross and the X Games does appeal because it's something different. You're in front of the spectators, and so it's certainly something I'd like to do. Unfortunately, I think budget permitted a bit this year that we couldn't do it, but it is something that we have looked into anyway.
Cool. One more. Vegemite or Marmite?
Marmite. No competition.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks very much.
It's been a pleasure. Cool.
Do you even have Vegemite or Marmite in
No, we
the
don't
States?
have it all.
What the hell is that? Oh, it's my phone.
It's your phone.
Let's go with that.
Please try.
Oh, it's Siri.
Yeah.
What's
I was
Siri,
wondering what the hell that
what's
was.
Siri telling you?
I've got no service, so she can't take any requests right now.
Thanks, Siri.
I thought it was coming from this thing.